Welcome to the Longmont Museum, a center for culture in northern Colorado, where people of all ages explore history, experience art, and discover new ideas through dynamic programs, exhibitions, and events. My name is Scott Yoho. I'm a digital content manager here at the Longmont Museum, and Justin Veach is taking a rare night off. Tonight's program is offered as part of our virtual Thursday Nights at the Museum series. These happen, oddly enough, every Thursday night at 7:30. We offer a free panel, lecture, conversation, reading, or live performance via live stream to our website, Facebook, and local Comcast cable television. Next week, we have a terrific program planned with the guest curator of our Enduring Impressions exhibit, Simon Zalkind, and Molly Medikovich from the Denver Art Museum on the subject of printmaking and Impressionism. Before we start, I'd like to thank all the people who make our programming possible. The Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, the Stewart Family Foundation, the Friends of the Longmont Museum, our many museum donors and members, and our media sponsor, the mighty KGNU Community Radio. We simply couldn't do all that we do without you, so thank you. For more information about all we do here, or to find out about how you can support the museum's work, visit longmontmuseum.org. Now for tonight's program. Twice a year, once in the fall, and then again in April for Poetry Month, we offer a poetry reading featuring local poets of national and regional renown. Tonight, we're thrilled to offer you an evening of poetry featuring the winner of the 2020 Colorado Book Award for Poetry, Abigail Chabitnoy, and Christosto Apache. Normally we offer an open reading, but tonight we're going to cut straight to the chase and kick things off with our first poet of the night, Christosto Apache. Originally from Mescalero, New Mexico, Christosto Apache is part Mescalero Apache, Chiricahua Apache, and Diné Navajo of the Ashahi Salt Clan, born for the Ki'ani Towering House Clan. He earned an MFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Apache's debut collection, Genesis, published in 2018, stems from the vestiges of memory and cultural identity of a self-emergence as language, body, and cosmology. His poems have appeared in Yellow Medicine Review, Denver Quarterly, Hawaii Review, Red Ink Magazine, Cream City Review, Plume Anthology, and Commonplace, the Journal of Early American Life, and in photographer Christopher Felver's book, Tending the Fire, Native Voices and Portraits. Apache currently lives in the Denver metro area with his spouse, where he teaches writing at various colleges and continues his advocacy work for the Native American LGBTQ two-spirit identity. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Christosto Apache to the Longmont Museum.
Thank you for that applause. I'd like to thank the Longmont Museum for having me out tonight. I think this is going to be a wonderful event. I'm going to read from my book, Genesis Redacted. I'm going to first start off with a couple of the thread that binds the book, and a couple of poems inside. And then I'm going to also read a few of my newest work from a manuscript that I'm working on called Ghost Word. My book, Genesis, is sort of an inspiration from conversations that I've had with my mother. The thread of the book happens in 9 months, and the idea and premise behind the book is so that the conversations with my mother would circle around while she was carrying me in utero. So the thread of the book also combines some of the activity that my mother was involved with, where she was staying with my father's mother during the winter months when she was weaving. I also paired that with what was happening in the world globally and interstellarly. So the first poem I'm going to read is The Beginning, 1970. November says, the heavy frost crawls forward. Her exterior breath exists as a ghost expiration. Their deceased face live inside Tuhajale, a place where water originates, where 0, 0 intersect, a derivation of X and Y. They all extend from white, gray, and black wefts. Our origin, a gray stucco house on a small mesa knoll, devoid of color. One night in November, the Leonoid meteor shower penetrates Earth's atmosphere. Residue within the constellation Leo sparkles in a luminescent afterglow. Meanwhile, trajectories of lunar missions and nuclear tests commence with an unacquainted devastation in future conquests. November 1st to November 30th, 1970. Two, 1971. January says, the sheerest white lingers still. Cumulative stars gather against a verdant eastern sky. Her precarious frame rattles the entrance. Her womb leans alongside faint fire. A sedentary whelm of kerosene light sinks. Fibers against her dense, rapid border begins to interweave. She emits a woven-laden cradle song. Central fire sings of extinct salt. Collapsing, towering houses. Within the first week of January, the quadrant meteor shower grazes the Earth's atmosphere. Residue from the meteor afterglow illuminates the constellation Botis. Meanwhile, a lunar expedition concludes the month with an undetected nuclear test. The song ceases. January 1st, 1971 to January 31st, 1971. Then I'm going to read a couple of poems inside the threads. This first one is called Synapse. Encased lining weighs against your skin, sweltering, not swelling, not moving beyond taction or that saddling a bod of breath, which pushes against the gild embroider or esophagus, maybe a chrysalis. Cufflinks secure a phonic breath. In crisscrossing singed hands, another absence of your breath. No exclamation to butterfly wings, no trembling to hummingbirds. Your moon-written word, your sun phases form. Water delineates the swirling vacuum of air and whispering gasps. Your eyes widen on eaves, awake from last night. Water ripples from formed fountain drops. Iron wrench turns in a clockwise creak. Sighs decease and decompress. Counterclockwise increases your aspirate gas. Droplets cushion and form quickening moss, ever thickening at the base. A black glistening liquid undulates with slow currents, splaying glissades of ebbs by plummeting onto your chest cavity. Every breath hastens its impact, a cacophony of murmurs, soft kisses on your desiccate forehead, forsaken within the longing glottal frill, never leaving your sneer, a cadaver's smiling gaze. The night before, a labyrinth of crude bathroom stalls lining up with each coffer edifice, emanating an echo of moans and dispels, a small voice among lit lamp flickers. Night after night, these reoccurrences do not fade against the brown rust slippage of liquid language. Sitting at the edge of your lips, Verdigris procures a sludge of blatant memory, sacred to turquoise at dusk. That same dusk, your body is left in a margin of cornfield and merging roadway. Your head faces south, tilting just enough to see that reoccurrence disappear in the gleam of red taillights. You again and again and again, until the next morning as the sun swells with pink linings. It bereaves the sound of doves taking flight, hushing the shrills of sitting thrush. So I'm going to end with my reading from the book, and then I'll read a couple of my poems from new work. So this last poem that I'm going to read from my book is the concluding poem. The construction of this particular poem is done in reverse as the others, to sort of just close off the idea and the thread of the book. So I start with the space exploration, and then I end with the activity from my mother. Once again, a full moon positions itself between the earth and sun, absorbing all the glory of his rays, emulating. Satellites launch for the first time into Earth's orbit, and one lunar capsule plunges into the sea. Life emerges. Gul'i, my birth. August 1st, 1971, August 7th, 1971. Emergent emanations from birth. Like a gossip lamb, he is placed inside a shoebox, no constitution of place. Towards Ts'at, cradleboard. Towards Kwa, Hoan, home. Towards Inde Bikeya, Dene Bikeya, homeland. Towards Inde Bizad, Dene Bizad, language. Life acquisition of identity toward X. Appune to maskell gatherers, burnt wood gatherers, sheep harvesters. After salt is extinct, towering houses topple. A return to origin, beginning, center fire, home, whirling. Denist Agu, August says, everything ripens. 1971. Da'atkadi, da'ajanti. So I'm just going to read a couple of poems from my new work. This new work has been sort of a work in progress over many years. I was introduced to a book from Arthur Z., who continues to be a teacher of mine through life, I suppose. You never lose your first teachers. But he gave us a carbon copy of a Japanese modernist writer, Ryunosuke Akutagawa, which he wrote his last manuscript called A Fool's Life, which afterwards he committed suicide. So this really propelled me to write and communicate with this manuscript or this book. It took me a long time to find an actual copy of it because it's been out of print. So this is sort of just a conversation or a thought or some kind of interaction with that particular book. He wrote 53 entries, and that seemed to be the last of his writing. So there's going to be quotes interjected with each poem, and the quotes are from that manuscript. Number 1, the pages. Oh, the manuscript is called Ghost Word. Number 1, the pages. Quote, for a time from the ladder's top, he had been watching them, unquote. R. Akutagawa. Now, more than 25 years ago, I made my own passageway, a wandering way made through a folded anthemium, a dark place old as fingers, turning the paper shells of overused lines on shelves. I discovered more of those names calling from beyond the mountains, from beyond the sea, from beyond the madness and disheveling confessions. Repetition of tousled vowels led them all into a deep lull of flat slivers, smelling of mold and replete decay. I sift through these repeating voices as a tenacious howl. Oh, the mountains of Han Shan. Oh, the disobedience of Milton. Oh, the insanity of Poe and the many woes of Plath, each full of the sinking glares. If I still feel small against them, then for that small moment in my life, I can sense an inure stutter toward each Anglo utterance, and I forget I ever heard their names calling. I lean into them as twilight leans into its coming dread. Those names remain a decade blur of my own pages, a forsaken twilight, unlike the famed Century's End. Maybe my own century's end. This one is number 10. It's called Carrizo. Carrizo is a part of the reservation that I grew up on. And this is from my uncle Edgar. Quote, "The submarines inside was dim," unquote, R. Akutagawa. In my youth, I hitched a ride to San Diego, across chirping desert and distant night. I gazed upon a slow-moving dark, encasing in a convex cerulean cavity. Each night, I stood beneath the sky for hours mesmerized, as the perplexed reformatory twinkling lights of broken glass fragments spreading against the glistening sunset. A faceless man behind a lost reflection of glass at a drive-up window informs me, "Too bad you know nothing of your own past." How far will I walk against the night, conforming to a captivity I had never realized? Some years later, under the kitchen table, they all huddle as the rampage continues toward the back of the house. A clash of debris from the other rooms recoil, and broken sounds escape the barricade of doors. I remember returning in 1970. All they remember is me sitting at the edge of my bed with the war still in my hands. This one is number 7, called Titivating. Quote, "All at once he was struck," unquote. Standing before the 4 of them, I, dressed in this worthless form as they march in place, tapping blades against their buckskin skirts. Staying in a sturdy gaze through the depths of their smudged eyes, tiny tin cone jingles against others as large copper bells clink. And from the huddle of the oak brush arbor others come to join in. Ash smeared upon each limb and lightning jags above each arm, speckles of black glistening through their torso, inside white streaks oscillating in my once open slits. Each etched worm and vertical scars lay upon my wrist as electric plumes spreading inside my archaic stance. Thwarting hide slams into a 2-beat dance, wiping a white line across my nasal bridge, which carries a benediction against the somnolent sky. With each vacillate crown, their arms forward in an outward Y, releasing a shimmering body of dying celestial ghosts through some millennia. The metal noise ends my doubt, breaking my worthless vanity in two, carving a way through my ghastly spray against Earth's atmosphere, summoning the creature who now protects me from the ever-red drip, from the worthless clay form I was dressed in. Let's see. I'm going to read one more, and then I'll call it quits. This one is called Fold. Quote, a dog consistently teased will not rapidly jump at a piece of meat thrown to him once in a while, unquote. Like that hanging lamb, I tried to find peace inside. As you move in greater numbers through the arroyos, you turn like a flock of birds, undulating in flight. Upon arrival and upon entry, you gather towards the far end of the corral, as you always done. Like that hanging lamb, I try to find peace inside, where there are no fine wools or beds of brush, only time which shapes endless crests and plateaus, a safe place to curl when night falls. Like that hanging lamb, I try to find peace inside. From a slight slit, it is time for your life to flow down your neck to a small violet pools below. You will keep me alive if you are well prepared, with care of skins, internal organs, and range of meats, each signifying a purpose to partake. Like that hanging lamb, I try to find peace inside. With this blade in hand, I feel the quick quiver and of your final sigh as you enter in and become part of me. I must now acknowledge and understand this burden when one day I must commit this violent act, but in turn you will save the life which is mine. Thank you.
Abigail Chabitnoy is the author of How to Dress a Fish, Wesleyan 2019, the winner of the 2020 Colorado Book Award for Poetry, and shortlisted in the international category of 2020 Griffin Prize for Poetry. She was a 2016 Peripheral Poets Fellow, and her poems appeared in Hayden's Ferry Review, Boston Review, Tin House, Gulf Coast, Lit Hub, and Red Ink, among others. Recently, she was the recipient of the Witter-Binner-funded Native Poet Residency at Elsewhere Studios in Payona, Colorado, and is a mentor for the Institute of American Indian Arts MFA in Creative Writing. She is a Koniag descendant and a member of the Ta-Ni-Ha-Nak Native Village in Kodiak. Abigail holds a BA in Anthropology and English from St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and an MFA in Creative Writing from Colorado State University in Fort Collins. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Abigail Chabitnoy to the Longmont Museum.
Shemai, hello, Koyana. Thank you to the Longmont Museum for hosting this event and this wonderful series. Thank you to Chris Osto for joining me this evening. It's a real pleasure to read with you again and to hear your new work. And I love to see all the little patterns that emerge. One of my most beloved mentors also introduced me to Akutagawa when I was a younger student, I suppose. And that work really left a mark on my own writing. I'm going to be reading tonight from a little bit from my book, How to Dress a Fish, as well as also some newer work from a manuscript I'm just finishing up called Anatomy of a Wave. And there are certain threads that kind of weave in and out of both of these works. And I think they'll be apparent as I read. But my debut collection, How to Dress a Fish, was really written for my family. And so it's fitting. It's, on the one hand, so nice to be in a museum after this year, but also a bit of a tease because I can't walk through the museum. But the last time I was in a museum was with my sister just before everything closed down. And so perhaps it's missing my family that I haven't seen in a year that makes it especially nice to get to read from this work, which is a celebration of our family's history, our heritage, our survival, and the ways in which those threads of family linger and lead us home. Chabitnoy, translation, Salmon Fisher. Michael Chabitnoy, Aleut, 1886 to 1920. Because they were of the water, because they were given Russian names, he was born with hushed words. Because his mother had a bad heart and his father was traumatized, they took him from the sea. Because he came to the school charitably before, because there is only one photo after, they told the skeptics, yes, it can be done. Because it could be done, because Indian marries white girl, because he died of consumption, there are words I can't say. Because he was survived by 2 sons, because they were called half-breed, because that second son took to drink, I've always been afraid of the sea. Because he was survived, it doesn't mean salmon fisher. Because I need to know I can say these words. Because it means mischievous, energetic. Mischievous men and women fish for salmon energetically. Because he was an orphan. Because in summer my skin turns redder than my father's. Because they asked my mother, is she adopted? Because I too am of the water. Because I hear these words, I will split my bones and fit my skin to the sea. I will shape my mouth to angle these words with the wind. I suppose I should also say this is a book that celebrates my family's survival of the Carlisle Indian boarding school experience. And so that act of assimilation is a large presence in these works. Lessons in articulation. He didn't tell us when he learned what it meant that they took their words from them. If he were not an accountant, my father, he might have been a historian, a fisherman, or he might have been nobody. He might have been unsettled. Father, did you have these questions when you were young with only your cousin, your aunt? Father, did your father know? Did your father tell you how he and his brother were called half-breed, how he didn't know his father? Did you read to your mother? Did you read to your dog until you could pronounce the words properly? Did you eat Hershey's chocolate toast sandwiches with your father? Did your father read aloud from his Bible, or did he keep his words from you? Father, did you dream then of salt sweeping your lungs, of sand and volcanic rock beneath your feet, or snow? Did you watch the birds as a boy for company? Did you try to give them names? Father, did you play Indians, or were you cowboys? How did you feel the way your father asked your mother for a sandwich and a beer, like a man? Mother says these things skip a generation. I don't remember learning these words: deprivation, decimation, assimilation, relocation. I don't remember Carlisle in my school books. Was it something you showed me, Father, that summer we toured all the battlefields? If he were not an accountant, my father, he might have been a historian. But there was no value in these things, no way he could convey. I don't know when I learned what it meant. They took our words from us. Dream with shark. I dreamt my mother placed me in the sun to bake by the water. I bake so red, so hard, I couldn't take this new skin off. I couldn't cover this new skin with fur or feathers, not even hair. No other shape would adhere to my new body, only teeth. No other shape could press into my body. Mother, what do I do with these arms? They won't bend, Mother. How do I move these arms? I can't tell if it's more disconcerting to read to an auditorium or to read in one's living room, but new pandemic experiences every night. Before there was a train. I built my home from perfumed skins and crooked bones, far from the rotting boat. They took the wrong shape. Sod, not ice, not body, not other. Nikik. Ongluch nikimek patamok. The wrong tongue. By the time you read this, I will have forgotten how to say the house is covered with sod or home. Part of me wishes it had sunk. It sank. It is sinking. But these sentences have not been written yet. Only Ashrane Shu'ut Kachainek Bakuh Tartut. Sometimes people salvage some stuff. And I think this is, I'm going to read maybe two more from this collection before moving on. And my family really must be on my mind tonight. This one is called Family Ghosts. I was dreaming for a long time, but now I can't remember. I don't know what words I had to say. The water was my fault. The earth was my fault. And the daughter too. She was there, and me. I was many in the dream, around a girl-shaped hole, in the cellar of an old rock in the foundation. In the dream, often there is a fissure, a cave. We were many in the earth, in the foundation, and I knew then, blood in my mouth like dirt, I was at fault. I buried the earth. I buried each of my other selves until the earth was full with daughters, granddaughters, great-granddaughters. I buried each until I could not see or hear, and I emerged, singular and silent. Regenerating landscapes. 1. I buried my bones, no trace was left. I buried my bones, and the landscape became settled in its disturbances. There's no telling where the hand that digs might unearth the outline of a dwelling place, the shape of ivory in the process of becoming human. It is not evident. I buried my bones in the vault where they were of little consequence. More matters to settle in the end. The land remembered only now. I want to live somewhere old in the earth. On the water now there are many boats, but the vermin they are hunting is dead with metal feet. His pelt is already sinking out of reach. Old in the water, let me sink mine in enough earth to bury me. 2. Mother, it was my fault. I buried each of my other selves until I couldn't see, The earth was full. I was born in this wound, Mother. Singing made it so, steel singing, destined men singing mercantile songs, manifesting swindling songs, singing Say You See, singing beautiful spacious skies, singing the brave in dread silence reposes. You sang this land for me, Mother. Each night I must find a new way to lay these arms stiff under the weight of my body. 3. I don't know what I expected, but at length I found myself alone. I found myself apart in a room of my own making, susceptible to drowning, to cave-ins. I couldn't hold a shape my own among so many bones and matter besides. The field turned relic into me. 4. Like this, Apak, can I wear these faces? Which way shall I bend these bones? Does my skin show through these furs? Do my metal feet bear too much weight? Can I bend my arms in light of morning? Can I bend them in name for what I now believe? Return every last bone to the land. I will shape my body in the sound of waves breaking the shore. If singing made it so, these days will not be many now. 6. I wonder if you hear me, Apak. I wonder if I say your right words. Michael, will you row the boat ashore and dig a womb-shaped home with my arms for your arms, for all the word-worn arms, until the waters breach our skin and sink these bones in their weight, in the sand, to begin again without blood in the print. And so I'm going to move to some of these newer poems, and these are largely concerned with the connection, narratives and violence against women, violence against indigenous people, violence against the landscape, and how these narratives apologize for and enable and can also be a means of reshaping and revisioning these violences. Signs you're standing at the end. 2/3 of the country is in drought. The waters have all gone walking. Nuna kuachaluni. When white peaks crested the rolling hills behind our house, I knew it was time. We understand since we are children, waves break waves, travel waves, do the wave. Did the wave make it across the room? Did the people who started it move across the room? Cause of death, traumatized. Cause of death, bad heart. Cause of death, exposure. I heard it was an accident in the end, in the breakers. There was no boat when I heard it. I took my sister and some others out the back door. The calm was not, and the neatly kept lawn was not. The sleeper wave was not. Too many teeth I saw too late. The wave would not be dove under. It turned snow, wet and heaving, and we were already running. After a field, I could hear every dead thing. How do we behave in the field? They asked for a story, the ones we'd have to leave behind, swallowed by the hoary mouth. Never ignore what someone tells you in a dream, once the women said. You were trying to remember what someone said who is dead. Kuchiangwa u chikamkin, lampak kuashu. A persistent dream of large bodies of water and everything that might be waiting within. For Joan and those she is called after. Navayok, how to tell you, last night we were on this ship together, and you were there to comfort me. But this morning I am afraid for you, black stealing over the waters. My lips are never not splitting. Tell me, are the wolves living along this shoreline any gentler than the Moscow water dog? Even the Przemyślniki let them go extinct. Have we ever not been readying for war in your lifetime? Already my family is calling me, the ones I don't know how to name. In the stories I learned as a girl, you are otherwise called after one who knows things. You are called after one who knows how to listen. She was given fire and earth. This ground we are on has a history of flooding. Does it follow we are drowning? Cut the breast out of a woman and she becomes a bird. Or was it her guts? She can fly, I mean. It's that simple, so the stories go. Girls go into the woods and return mothers. So we invent little men. Irresistible magic. Have we ever not been readying for war? At any moment the ship could sink. Mothers go into the water, become forces to be reckoned. It can all fail tragically. The waters take and give us back our dead. We will have this ship, the water, contents we have found. This poem is for my mother. I say that with caution because I'm not sure if she would read it the same way I do, but I hope that I do some justice to the courage that she has instilled in me. And it was also written after a painting called Baptism by Fire by John Patrick Cobb, which was displayed at the Mexic Art Museum in Austin, Texas. In a painting in the tent, did they call it shrine? Did they call it temple? In the museum, in the part of Texas everyone said was all right, I found a girl with my mother's name who brought fire down from the mountains. It would have been dark without it, don't you think? The sky, burdened with gold. But for that woman-sized break of blue she passed through, she carried this fire from the gods, or the heavens, or the mountains, in her dress, in the earth, on the ground, at her feet. That is, out of her hands, it would have cast the setting in shadow. Sometimes you have to rip a hole in the sky. Sometimes you have to tear a seam into the fabric. This is my beloved mother, no one told to put the fire down. This is my beloved mother, no one cast her glow into shadow and shame. This is my beloved mother, with fire in her dress. See, she prepares to ignite the fire with her magic. And this poem is very loosely in conversation, or at least departing from a poem by Audre Lorde, and of course I'm blanking on the title of the poem at this moment, and it does not do her justice, but nevertheless it's become one of my personal favorites, I guess. A prong or sharp point, such as that on a fork or antler. How about a unicorn horn? Impatient, restless, unrelenting, I would like to dream more often about wonderful beasts than war, or an ordinary tooth. Mother, plait my hair and send me to the sea. Let me be unseen. Wicked women are always allowed as much, and I am tired of being easy prey. How many times have I woke unable to scream, mouth agape and filling with air? I used to, at first, that is, I thought it strange to dream a man I didn't know and know he meant to do me wrong. The dream is a reliable indicator. She is waking up. The dream is a harbinger often. She is waking up. The dream is a situation increasing. She is waking up. There were tines strewn across the bed. I woke with my hand in a fist around a bloodied hollow point. I'm only going to read a few more because as we were talking before, we mentioned you start to read too many poems and you notice your images recurring. And if you haven't noticed, I have a fascination with teeth and arms. So I will just read, I think, a couple more from this manuscript, and then I am going to end on one newer poem that perhaps will be a third manuscript, but right now still feels different than where I've usually been in my poems, but also very much pulled into our present society and past society. So one more of these, and then I will end on that. If you're going to look like a wolf, they have to love you more than they fear you. The first deer had large teeth and no horns and were not afraid. The first deer did not have enough fear for the men who needed them to survive. A woman decided to let the men eat. A grandmother decided her deer shall have horns and be afraid. Someone's mother decided the men shall eat and shall be feared. A man thought wolves should be used to cull the herd. And we, who had been catching water dripping through stone in the homes we dug out of the earth, we licked our long teeth clean and set to work. And we still have work to do, as this poem is titled Rules of War. 1. 2 nights we played war in the big house without consequence. I hid myself at the center under covers, eating strawberries, and a lamp cast my radius in light. After a time, provisions could not be reached without blood catching debris. Come out, they pleaded. We have needs, they said. The bullets were not live. There were faults in the wall when we began. Come out, you have needs. I gathered all the bulbs I could hold without breaking, shined through child-sized holes. They had made each body too splendid to be held, each a body not held. Each was a body someone had held. 2. The obvious. All our hands were red. And why should I have dreams following men in men's houses? I was searching for suitable forms of violence for my brother's sons. How long till their hands are great enough to make fists? How long till their legs can bear the weight? One mustn't strike from a supine disposition. We are told we mustn't strike before one can stand. These games for teaching rules of war, these games for learning to stand in a state weaned on war. Again, Kayana, thank you very much, and have a good night.
I'd like to thank everyone who tuned in this evening. Especially like to thank Abigail Chabitnoy. And I'd especially like to thank Christoso Apache for their reading this evening. Want to remind you that we're here every Thursday night at 7:30. That's why it's called Thursday night. And next week we have a really fantastic program. Once again, we're featuring the guest curator of our Enduring Impressions exhibit, Simon Zalkin, and Molly Medokovich from the Denver Art Museum, and they'll be discussing the subject of printmaking and Impressionism. I hope you join us. Thank you and good night.